Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday, May 7th, 2024. This is a school board workshop, and the time is 12 p.m. There are 3 items on the agenda. Number 1, transportation overview. Number 2, Jules settlement briefing. Number 3, the agenda review of the May 7th, 2024 regular agenda. Per board protocol, each member should strive for 4 minutes for initial comment, 2 minutes for a follow-up, for a total of 10 minutes. Member Giovanelli will be joining us in a little bit. At this moment, we're having a difficulty technology-wise at the moment. Oh no, actually, we're good to go. We'll take that back. So we're going to start off then with our transportation overview with Mr. Roger Lloyd. So if you want to begin, Mr. Superintendent.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Fisher, and just want to welcome to the podium our Executive Director for Transportation, Mr. Roger Lloyd. Roger, please just give us a nod when you're ready to proceed. Okay, very good. Thank you, sir.
All right, good afternoon, school board.
Mike, sir.
Okay, can you hear me any better?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. All righty here. My name is Roger Lloyd. I am the Executive Director of Transportation here in the school district. We do have a brief presentation for you. I understand that you guys have had it for a week, but I do have some people I definitely would like you to meet as we go through here. So the presentation agenda, we do have brief introductions. We have a department overview, some transportation data, the key performance indicators, the KPI. There was a brief, I believe about a month ago, brief introduction to the KPIs in transportation. We'll go over those a little bit more in more detail. Strategies to increase on-time delivery. That's what we have been doing not only this year but in years past. You'll see where we get the data to look at the decisions and why we make the decisions that we do. There was a question about the impact of the proximity changes to elementary school. So I did put a slide in on that, which will lead to the middle school. What do we expect for the middle school proximity change coming up? We do have a couple visuals. We thought it might be nice for you guys to see not only the reports that we look at, but just a snapshot of the map that GPS actually shows us. We'll go through the updates for the KPIs, where we are at this point in time, and then we'll open this up for comments and board discussion. So the directors, these are the people that get the job done. They have a tremendous responsibility. It seems like every year I'm gonna brag on them. They're asked to do more with less as we go through here. The first person, the West Compound, Miss Jennifer Charles, she's out there. That West Compound obviously is in the West Zone. 6 Mile Compound is in the South Zone. I do not see Mr. Manny LaFelice here, but he is the director of the 6 Mile Compound. We have the Buckingham Compound represented by Mr. Jared McKinney. He is the director in Buckingham. That is an East Zone compound. And sitting directly behind him, you have the director of the Leonard Compound, Mr. Richard Perdue. Just a quick overview. Total employees, 856. At the highest, we had just under 1,200. So when I gave this presentation, probably 3.5 years ago, it was 1,180. So we are definitely struggling not only with bus operators and attendants, but support staff and garage staff. It's across the board. I put the numbers there. Bus operators, there's 513. We are budgeted for 600 bus operator positions. So at the time that I presented this to Cabinet, we were at 87 drivers short. So we have, starting any day off, we have 87 open routes. Bus attendants, there's 218. Support staff, there's 77. Support staff would include the dispatchers, the routers, the video people, the field trip specialist. So these are the staff that actually supports not only the schools, but the drivers and the attendant themselves. Has to do with my zone supervisors. And then when you look at the garage staff, there's 48 of them. That includes not only the 4 bus compounds that you see below, but it also includes the staff at the central office, because they also fall under transportation's purview there. So we do have 48, that's shop supervisors, mechanics, and service mechanics at that point. Most of you guys are familiar with where these compounds are located. We give addresses there. 6 Mile is, 14701, 6 Mile Cypress. I like to say it's by the Walmart and the Home Depot. It's across the street from the Sheriff's Department, just to give you an idea of where these places are located. The west compound is directly behind the high school and the middle school. So if you go out there and think of Chiquita, it's right behind the high school. Buckingham, also easy to describe. It's right by Buckingham Exceptional Center. Very close, probably a half mile from Riverdale High School. So Leonard compound, a little bit more as you head into Lehigh. It is on Leonard Boulevard as you go into Lehigh itself. So those are the locations of the compounds. So here's some just quick data. This is the data that came from our surveys that we returned to the state in March. So this is data from this February 2024. We had over 70,000 students that were eligible. We had 47,000 that actually rode the bus during that 2-week period. Daily buses, 548. The daily buses, you'll notice we need 600. So how did we get to 548? As we plan for the shortage of drivers, the 87 routes that are open, we have to condense routes. We have to plan for coverage. We have to take an open route. We'll split between 2 buses, maybe 3, sometimes even 4 buses. So what we have to do is we have had to condense or consolidate routes to get to the 548 buses. In doing so, the bus routes, 2,442. So when you look at the bus routes, if you think about each one of those buses, they do 2 routes in the morning and at least 2 routes in the afternoon. So that's where you get 2,442 bus routes. Our routes are doing at least, our buses are doing at least 4 routes per day. Many of them are doing 3 and 4 or coverage stops. Stop locations, we have 5,778 stop locations. And on a daily basis, in the afternoon and in the morning, we are stopping nearly 30,000 times. So our buses are putting on their amber lights, throwing out the stop arms, and actually stopping almost 30,000 times every single day. Route changes. I thought this was important to put in there. As of the 26th of April, there were over 12,000 stop change requests. These are requests that parents make, that schools make, that get put into the system. It's an electronic system. If you notice, we have granted over 93% of those. I know you hear a lot of times that we're sticklers and we don't necessarily do what we can, but we do everything we can. We are a customer service based program here, and it's not Lee-Tran, it's not a for-profit private company. We are customer service. We're here to service obviously the students, the parents, but also the schools to get them out there. So if we're not breaking school board policy, state laws, or regulations, we're doing everything we can to appease the parents with this. So we do have 93% of our requests are granted. We actually get through there. Continuing with some data, those are route miles. 53,708 miles are traveled every single day by routes. The average route mileage, so in the morning, each school, again, each bus will have at least 2, but the average route mileage is 22 miles, just under 22 miles. The annual miles are 9.6 million, and again, it's actually more because that takes into the route mileage. That doesn't include coveraging, that doesn't include all the activity events, all the field trips, all the pre-K speeches, all the CBI trips that we go through there. Those are simply route miles from our system, 9.6 million. Average route time, 58 minutes and change going through there. For what we do with school choice, you got to remember proximity we brought in for elementary, but we're still traveling a good distance for the middle school and high school. The ABO is important, the average bus occupancy. They take a look at the number of students at the first school and they add the number of students on the second school to get the average bus occupancy. There used to be a complaint, or parents would call and say, I just saw your bus coming down the road and they only looked like they had 25 kids on it. And that's a popular complaint that we deal with. In all honesty, the average bus occupancy, the ABO, has never been an issue with us. Our issue has always been the length of the routes, not only in mileage, but in time. And I like to bring up, we have a bus that comes, or did years ago, from Captiva to Dunbar. It's a long route. And we went ahead and we actually put one stop to pick up 5 other kids as it came in. And the complaint was, it's a long enough route, why are you putting another stop on this? And when parents see that, you know, it's wasteful. How can you do this? But really, the problem when you have a choice program in transportation like we do, it's not the bus occupancy that's the concern. It's the length of the routes, really in time. We don't want those kids to be on that bus any longer than they need be. The other telling sign when you look at the ABO is, if you look, it's increased. It's increased because we don't have drivers. So now where we're covering, I'm adding 2 or 3 extra stops. Those are extra kids that we're putting onto these routes as we go forward. So this is just a review. We do look at the KPI goals. We're always looking to increase on-time percentages. We absolutely focus on the morning, first and foremost, and there's 2 reasons for that. One is loss of instructional time. There's no way around that. If we are late to schools, the kids are losing instructional times. The second is safety. We put parents in real tough situations because they have to get to work. So do you leave the kids on the street corner? How do we go ahead and do that? So our main focus has always been in the morning. And then we look at safety. We're always trying to improve our safety record. And the best way to do that is look at the percentage of preventable accidents. We do get rear-ended quite a bit. And we're always looking at, okay, of the accidents, which ones are preventable? How do we move forward making this a safer ride for everybody? So how do we increase on-time delivery? We are analyzing data every day. Our GPS data, it is amazing. I could spend a day going through everything that program gives us. The buses get, we call it dinged or pinged every 10 seconds. So when a parent says, hey, I just passed your bus, he's 10 miles over the speed limit, we can actually pull it up. We can run our cursor right over that. It'll tell us how fast they're going. When parents say, hey, the bus never stopped this morning and never picked up my kid, I can look it up and say, actually, the bus did stop. The door was open for 23 seconds. So we are always looking at the data, the on-time delivery, the route itself, the coverages. So this allows us to consolidate routes, which is a necessity. We can't do this without consolidating the routes, without becoming the most efficient transportation company as far as coverage. So when I have one route open, do I cover it with 2 buses? Do I cover it with 3 buses? How do you efficiently do it? Because if I cover it and I put a stop way east and the next school is south, I've just increased the length of time it takes that bus to go back. So we look at this information and say, what is the best option? What helps most of the kids at the same time? I will tell you, and you guys played a key role, obviously, the pay increase to $18.90 has helped. It definitely has helped. What hurts is, one, our drivers are 180 days. I don't want to say it's a part-time job. They work when the kids are here. The other issue is the split day. They work in the morning for a few hours, they're off the clock for a few hours, and then they come back, and that's tough. That's why we struggle a lot of times in the afternoon. One, you have the weather. 2, you have a smaller amount of time between the tiers. And then you do get those Fridays where people are tired, they go home after their run on Friday morning, and we don't seem to get as many back in the afternoon. So we do struggle more in the afternoon. Changes to the proximity plans, absolutely. I'm going to show everybody here. Question comes up to me all the time. Did the proximity changes help? Absolutely. At 100% absolutely. I think if you talk to the middle school principals, they will agree as well. Not that we don't have late buses, but where we were an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes late, we're only 40 minutes late, which again, still is not what we want, but it's much better. So if you talk to the middle school principal, they're going to tell you things haven't been this good for the last couple of years, but we're still running late. The data, when we look at it, you'll see. And I think you guys have been privy to this information going through here, so I know you guys are there. The task force. We've had the task force. I know the facilitator or the chairperson of that committee is going to address the school board. I don't want to steal his thunder, but it was a great opportunity for us to get our story out there, to educate the public. Everybody, we went through a lot of different options, and like I said, I don't want to steal his thunder, but I am looking forward to him presenting that. So here is the elementary proximity change. So that first column, FY23, that's June of last year. So at the end of the year, we had 729 drivers that were budgeted for, that we needed. The routes were just over 2,700. You can look at the mileage, the routes, the mileage per route, and the average time. We rerouted the whole system, which is what the proximity change forced us to do, because now the tie-ups were different between one school to the next. So we rerouted the whole system. That's where we came up with the number of 600. So right away, it decreased the number of drivers we needed by 129, which is huge. If you guys would not have agreed, if we would not have made this move, right now we're 87 short. You tack that on, we're over 200 short with no subs. It would have been impossible for us to get to where we are today. You can look at the reductions there, almost 10% in the number of routes, the miles, 23.4%. Everything is reduced. And we expect the same change when we go to the middle school proximity. However, it's not going to be on such a big scale. We're not going to see this dramatic of a change. But yes, changing the middle school proximity, it'll decrease the need for drivers. It'll decrease the need for the routes. It'll decrease the cost, the routes per mile. It'll have the same impact, just not to this degree. It just won't. So we were very pleased. Like I said, without the proximity change, we would not be as successful as we are. So there's the VO map. That's a snapshot, and that's a lot of information on there. And you'll see the red, those are the buses that are stopped. Could be stopped at a stop sign, stop light. The green shows you that they're moving. The white has them parked somewhere. You can run your cursor over any one of those buses and get infinite information on that particular bus. So this is something that the dispatchers have, the routers have, the zone supervisors have, all the directors have. We go through this on a regular basis. You go through any of their offices, and they're breaking down the data. They're trying to figure it out. Schools are very nice. They let us know, hey, this bus has been late on a regular basis. Is there anything you can do to help them out? And that's when you have to look at the individual buses. This is where you break down. Now, the next is the on-time percentage. And you guys have seen this. This is the 3-week, 4-week tracking that we do. But we can break this down not only by individual buses, but by individual bus ramps. We can look at elementary, we can look at middle, we can look at high. We can look through there and figure out, okay, what are the 3 schools we're going to focus on this week? What we'd like to do is not make the same bus late at the same school every time. That's an issue. So you need to tweak. So it's an ongoing process that we go through when we look at the data. And like I said, you'll see them, they have it on their phones, they're standing on bus ramps. So we're looking at the data, trying to make sure that we are doing the most efficient things possible to get these kids to school and home on time. So you saw a brief look at this about a month ago, but this is the 3-year total if you're looking by quarters, and this is the on-time percentages. So we are doing better this year. It's obviously not what we want to see, but it's getting better. If you look at 21-22, that would be the year really when we took our biggest hit with our drivers, and that was COVID. We had a lot of retirees that didn't feel comfortable coming back. So the 21-22 school year is when we saw a huge decline in the number of drivers we had. It doesn't show in the data because kids were also at Homeschool Connect. We weren't transporting that many kids. And we knew that, and we kind of were prepping we're going to feel this when the kids all come back to school. And that's what you saw last year and into this year as well. We have steadily been improving. I can tell you the first couple weeks were difficult. Our buses actually, I would argue with you that our on-time delivery at both the AM and PM would have been better the first couple weeks of school, but we did struggle to get our buses onto the ramp. So at the elementary level, you had the parent pickup ramps. So we had over 9,000 students in elementary school choose to be grandfathered into their school and gave up the right for transportation, which I'm sure you've heard this. So now we are transporting fewer students, but that means your parent pickup lines got a lot longer. And I know we'd have drivers saying, hey, I can see the school, but I've been in line for 20 minutes. And when we come through the gate is when we get targeted or dinged with GPS as far as being on time. So there was the first couple weeks, definitely our buses were there, which is frustrating. They want to get on the ramp. They know they have another school to get to. But we're continuing to work that out. Last one is accidents. Again, I think you guys saw a summary slide of this about a month ago. This is the 3-year total going through there. We routinely, quarterly have accident review committees. That's when there's a committee that actually looks at the accidents to see if it's considered preventable or non-preventable. They look at a police report, if one is there. They listen to the driver. There is a union rep there. The shop supervisors are there. So we go through and we make a determination whether it's a preventable or not preventable accident. Which leads to comments and board discussions.
Madam Chair, thank you, Mr. Lloyd, for the update. I understand that was promised that we would be bringing the board some information, just an update on this piece, but just I'd be remiss if I didn't say, the challenge of transportation isn't just the efficiency of how we go about our business. It's that we as a district, fundamentally, the way we approach our choice in our district is really what creates some of the larger stresses on the system. By providing transported choice, that is something that no district in our state does to the level that we do. It's part of the character of how, over the last 20 years, how our district has been defined is by providing choice to families so that they have multiple options, special programming, but also that they have the ability to get transportation to various sites. So the elementary proximity was an effort clearly to still allow that character of offerings to our families, but to do so at a more efficient cost point, because the dollars that we spend in fuel and in funding our daily operation for transportation, those are dollars we could be putting into the classroom. Those are dollars we could be using in a lot of other ways. And so I think it's essential to recognize that our budget, it's a choice when we spend our dollars in these ways, and yet you see still the inefficiency of just over 70% in the PM delivery. And a lot of that is also the constraints of when we offer our current school times, which we know as we move into 26, along with the rest of the state and adjustment of those school times, some of the major underlying parameters upon which our transportation system is based will also have to adjust as well. One thing that I had a chance to convene with the task force, at least the chair of the task force, to provide at least some initial, as they start to compile their final recommendations to the board. I had a chance to sit and listen to some of those recommendations. The transportation leadership team was there as well, so we all had a chance to kind of hear that. So that is going to be forthcoming to the board to be able to provide you some of what the task force, what basically is they assess the different factors and figured what are some things that could be potentially considerative changes that would potentially improve the operations here for the transportation, but none of them come without a significant toll. There is no easy solution. If there was an easy solution to this, then that would have already been provided. And I think that's one thing that just the chair of that, the facilitator of that particular task force wanted me to convey today as you had this update was there are a lot of opportunities, but I would say those opportunities are, they carry their own issues that are significant consequences, either in changes of service, in just massive, just like the elementary proximity was a massive change. And so I just feel it's important. Often we look at transportation and we're looking at them almost like it's isolated, like it's just a transportation department. In reality, they are facilitating the school choice that we offer. And so it really is more of a student assignment, student choice plan that really is the largest contributor to the difficulties that we experience in the transportation environment. And that's not to take aside all the other challenges that transportation has to deal with on a day-to-day basis in terms of managing the staffing, the efficiency of making their routes, optimizing those routes, and so forth. But I just wanted to give a credit to the team, to all the many people. They've been meeting basically every 2 weeks, I believe, to either provide updates as well as to work with the task force to really get into the nitty-gritty of how it's done. So just thank you for the opportunity to elaborate a little bit on what Mr. Lloyd said, and we stand ready for any questions or concerns that the board members would like to elevate at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Savage. Board comments, questions, concerns? Ms. Jordan?
First, I'd like to thank you very much and thank all of you as well. Appreciate what you do. My question is, I was trying to, maybe I misunderstood what I was reading. So on page, what was it? 5, it said you had daily buses are 548 buses. But then on page 4, you said that you have 513 operators. So who's driving the other 25 buses? Or did I misunderstand that?
Oh, no. So I'm glad you asked that question.
Okay.
So we are 87 drivers short. I have another 18 that are unavailable. They're on FMLA, they're on workers' comp, they're on leave of absence. So that puts me over 100. 2 weeks ago, we averaged 47 drivers a day call off. So the reality is, these guys and their crew, their teams, are covering 150 routes every day. So the question is, how do we cover them? They have to look at each one of those routes, and they have to pick and choose. For instance, if I have an open route, I will say the first 5 stops I'm going to put on bus A, the second 5 stops I'm going to put on bus B, and the final 5 stops I'm going to put on bus C. The problem with doing that, I get those kids home from high school. If you've looked at the high school principals love us. We're better than 97, 98%. But when I split that one bus and put it on 3 other buses, essentially I just made 3 other buses late to their next school. So if you look, it progressively, it's a domino effect. That's why middle school takes the brunt of it now. That's where middle school is the latest. We're late to the 210s a little bit later to the 310s. We get to 4 o'clock, you know, it's all hands on deck. We're trying to bring them on. So it's a good question. We're covering 150 routes every day. So you're splitting it, or hopefully if you have a bus that only has 30, I can put a whole nother bus on there. But in doing so, I'm making that bus that much later to the next school. So that's where we get hurt on that.
Okay, thank you. I thought I was like confused. So my other question too would be, thank you for that explanation. With the, and I know it's really rough doing this, the split shifts and everything that they have to do. I mean, we have that in the hospitality industry and it's always a challenge for that. But when you hear that they've gone on Friday, they've gone home, and then they decided to not come back that evening, what happens? I mean, so come Monday, they're just back to work? Because how does that continue to, I mean, it puts you all in such a situation.
And it does. And when you hear 47, it's crushing. Any driver that calls off hurts us. However, 47 with the number of drivers we have, industry standards for school bus drivers anywhere between 10 and 12% absenteeism. So these directors here, and Manny LaFelice, who's not here, they really have done a tremendous job in the last 3 years of curbing what used to be 19% down to 9 or 10%. So yes, it hurts us tremendously, but it has come down. They work on it daily. They speak to those individuals. So drivers get 5 sick days and 5 personal days a year. But you're looking for patterns, and they do. They address them. They call them in on an individual basis. Our kids need structure. They need, getting here on time, and they do write them up. We have to follow, their union members. We do have progressive discipline as far as the first one is a verbal conversation. Then you go from reprimand all the way to you can actually suspend them for repeated absenteeism. Gets dicey because if I suspend them for 3 days, that's
Right, it
just
hurts you
one
again.
less driver that you have.
Yeah.
So it is something that we look at on a regular basis, not only with recruitment and retention, but working on the absenteeism, absolutely.
And then I just have one final question too. Dr. Savicek called it the student choice plan. He mentioned it, referred it as such. Are you engaged in the process when we are doing these proximity plans in the initial stages?
Yes.
When these invisible lines are being drawn for our schools, do they pull transportation in for recommendations or what that looks like on that crazy map that you have? Yes,
we have been advised. We've been going hand in hand with them. Any any help, and for the people that have been around and remember going to the town hall meetings and looking at the different maps, I used to anything that reduced the proximity helps us. So obviously, as a transportation executive director, I wanted it to get as small as possible so I can zip around and get everybody there. In a perfect case scenario, I like to use Bonita. If we go to a 3-tier system, which I believe that's where we're going to be forced to go, because that will decrease the need for drivers. In a perfect case scenario, I drop off students at Bonita High School. I zip around that area down there. I drop the kids off at Bonita Elementary School. I zip around the area there, and now I drop them off at Bonita Middle. So now I have one bus that's actually doing 3 schools and getting them there. One, it decreases the need for drivers. It will increase the length of the routes, the length of what the drivers are getting paid, but that's a good recruitment, because now they're legitimately going to get 9 hours on the clock working, that you go through there. So I got to be honest, we've done that with summer school. We've had to, for this summer, go to actually 2 tiers. We did the 7 to 11 and the 9 to 12. Now, we did it out of necessity because we're not going to have the drivers. We would not have had the driver. Everybody likes to go 8 to 12, but the reality is I couldn't get them. But by going to the 2-tier system, now the drivers are getting double the hours. So now drivers that would go up north and go visit friends or go on vacation, it's not worth just working for 4 hours. Now it is working for 7.5, 8 hours. Now I am sticking around, and that's kind of the buzz we've got going there, and that's to cover it. So the 3-tier system, I think, is coming. I know I talked to the DAC last week, and I think they were more concerned about the bell changes coming up, which we don't have obviously anything set for that, but that'll be something. But that's July of 2026. Right now, we're focused on what we can do now to get these kids to school on time, get them home on time.
Again, I just want to thank all of you again. Appreciate it.
Dr. Savage had a...
Just one piece to make sure we're really addressing your question, Ms. Jordan. Additionally, in the demographers that worked with us in the design of the boundaries, they also look at the transportation infrastructure. Part of that is that are they putting the school options in the opposite direction of potentially some of the workflows. So for example, if you think about folks coming in the morning, coming down Lee Boulevard to come into the city of Fort Myers, and it's a lot of, it slows down the route time. So while the length may be normal, if they're in bumper to bumper traffic, that can be a challenge. And so designing the school boundaries in such a way to try to have the traffic flowing in the opposite direction at those critical times is just one other thing that was done when possible. In some cases, it just was geographically not able, but those were other considerations as they were designing those boundaries, was also looking at the transportation infrastructure as well to support that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Morgan, and then Ms. Patrica.
Thank you. Clearly, we are living on the edge. I guess, so I have really one question, and it doesn't need to be answered because I expect that HR will be addressing this, and that is, how do we recruit? I'm not confident that we've been reaching out to people who are coming out of public service jobs with a pension to come back into the workforce on a temporary basis. But that's a question for another day. So 26, we have to completely change our system, and we have a broken system. So are we looking at 26 today? Are we looking at, essentially we had people come in 4 years ago and look at our ITIS operation, and we drastically overhauled it as a result of that. Recently, we've done the same thing with HR. It seems to me that we need to do the same thing with transportation. If we're going to do it with transportation, we should be doing it not in the context of what we are doing today, but in the context of what we're going to have to do in 26. And in fact, it may be that we want to do 26 before 26, actually, that's kind of pushing it. But the whole point is that I just don't see us trying to solve the current problem. I think we need to be looking at solving the 26 problem, and that would be my comment. Thank you. And thank you, by the way, for the comment about the 3-tier too.
Yeah.
I hadn't,
Well, and I can tell you from our point of view, yes, 2026 is going to be an wholesale change for us. So we have been discussing and actually looking at different things. And so, yes, I know we have, because we always have to try to stay a year or two ahead.
well, I think it's going to be more than you all looking at solving the problem. I think we're going to have to bring in some people to just, because ultimately it may impact our choice system, you know, what we can do. And we can't go into that 6 months before 26 and let the community know we're making a drastic change. So I won't be here, but that would be my concern, that today we start planning.
Chairman, yes, Board Member Morgan, I have to shine a light on this process, and I just look up at Mr. Maris because he's been a part of these as well. So I think to your point, that's why this task force initially was convened with outside entities, Amazon, municipal government, folks from any logistical fields. All these folks were convened to kind of come together and start providing, first off, just even assessing the current state. But there's no question that the 2026 that is the kind of back planning date from it. And so when you heard Mr. Lloyd mention about a 3-tiered system, I mean, a 3-tiered system alone would be a dramatic change in terms of the footprint of what you'd even need from a labor footprint. If you actually compare our transportation staffing compared to many other districts of a comparable size, you'll see we have far more drivers. And it's because the current operation that we run. So if you move to a 3-tier system, that dramatically changes the footprint of what you would need for drivers. And so you'd have, I don't want to say a driver surplus, but I know it'd be awfully close to that based on our current staffing pattern, and that's simply by changing to 3 tiers. But while that sounds like an easy thing to do, a 3-tier essentially means instead of drivers presently, and you see how long the routes are and how low those average bus occupancies are comparatively for the drive time and length, you would now have to get 3 separate routes out of that morning and 3 separate routes out of what is presently a very compressed afternoon. So the school start times and that work along in conjunction with transportation that is the work ahead. And that's why these other groups were there. I didn't know if Mr. Mears had anything he wanted to add to it, but that was why we turned to an external task force. Now, our transportation folks were a big part of that, you know, helping inform, but it was to the point that you were making. Thank you.
That's it, thank you.
Ms. Patrica?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Lloyd. Slide 4, you don't have to turn to it. Garage staff, we have 48. Do we hire from our automotive programs? Do we offer internships to our kids who are at the technical colleges and in the high schools in automotive programs?
Yes, we do. And actually, for the service mechanics, they come out and get into our programs. We had, I think, 5 or 6 of them this past summer that came to us from our VOTEC programs. We've also had Grow Our Own program with some of the high schools there, that they actually got paid at the time $10 an hour to come over and get trained, and we still have a few of those mechanics. That is something that currently is not into place because there was not the interest at the high school, but that is something that we're looking to get back into, is to grow your own. But yeah, we go to the VOTEC program on a regular basis.
Great, and you don't have to give me this answer now because I assume you don't have it at your fingertips, but how much money was actually saved by moving to elementary proximity? I saw a lot of decreases in routes and decreases in number of drivers, but I didn't see decrease in money spent.
There you go. On paper, that slide that you saw, there's another slide that goes into the cost savings. In personnel, the 129 drivers we save, and the fuel costs, because our buses, we're lucky if we get 4.5 miles to the gallon. That alone was over 7.9 million right there. Now that's on paper. And again, it looks great with the routes, but the reality is I'm adding 5 stops to yours every day. I need you to pick up the activity buses. I need you to do this. So we will be able to find that out officially at the end of the school year when we have time. But on paper, last summer it was going to be 7.9 million. And that's not to mention, every 20 drivers equates to about $1 million. So if you take a look at the 87 that we've been short, that alone is another $4 million that's out there.
Excellent, thank you. And then I'm very anxious, and I thought we were going to get them today, the recommendations from the task force. Mr. Superintendent, when can we expect those, please?
Yes, I had that question circled down for myself as well. They're working to put together something in a memorandum form first. We were just going to highlight that it's coming, that it's going to be forthcoming, but I don't have an estimated date yet. But they will be forthcoming, and I'll work to get a better response.
Great. And then slide 13, please, if you could go to it, because I kind of want to show you something. So Dr. Savage talks all the time about the meaningfulness of data. And I look at this data and I'm not sure it means anything. Because while I might see a decrease in the number of accidents, so for example, from 21-22 to 23-24, the number of preventable accidents decreased from 33 to 24. But so did the number of routes and the number of drivers and the number of miles traveled. So what's the real decrease? And if we're not seeing a decrease, what are we doing to train or better prepare our drivers to prevent those preventable accidents? All esoteric sort of kind of questions, but...
Well, and again, we do talk about this. So why are we seeing an increase of preventable accidents? In a perfect world, we had a system to where if there was an accident, went to accident review committee, we actually had driver trainers and road safety supervisors that actually took the driver back out to the accident, kind of went over there, a retraining type of deal. To be honest, if you have a CDL, whether you're a supervisor, a dispatcher route, you're driving a bus. So we have backed off the retraining of that, which probably hurts us. But when we look at the data here, how can that the percentage of preventable accidents, how can that increase? What we're looking at is we have so many new drivers. So the people that are leaving us are people that are retiring, people that have been here for 20 or 30 years. So we're looking at a much, I don't want to say younger age-wise, but newer drivers, less experienced drivers. We started the year at 543 drivers. We're down to 513 going through there. But the age of experience, where we used to be fairly balanced, 0 to 30, you're seeing the largest portion are the new drivers. So that becomes it, and traffic seems to get worse every year going through there. So when we look at that, but it's a good point.
Okay.
What does this show us?
Thank you. And then two general comments. The first is choice. You know how much I love choice, especially for our high schools. And we have to, in my opinion, we need to continue to have some level of choice in elementary and middle so as to prevent complete segregation based on where we live. So I always bring this up when we talk about transportation. Have we thought about means testing? I have had 4 kids in our system, and if you told me I had to pay to put them on a bus, I would have paid. So I think that some schools have eliminated transportation altogether without paying for it. I think it's really, really, really important that we provide transportation and choice to families who do not have the means to do it themselves. But I also think we need to at least look at what the cost savings would be if we means tested transportation today. And my final piece of feedback is, and I've given this feedback before, would we have a decrease in absenteeism if we had a personal time buyback? So if at the end of the year, our drivers haven't used all their sick time and personal time, and we're going to buy those days back from them, might that not be an incentive to get up and go to work? Those are my comments.
We've made the same suggestion at the same thing. Do they hold them off? We've also talked about quarterly absenteeism incentives going through there. It helped tremendously with the ESSER funds. If you remember getting those, the drivers were getting bonuses. I don't know if you knew this, but that last that last quarter where they got that bonus, it did hinge on absenteeism, and it was amazing how many people could now show up. But that's a great idea. You get 10 days, whatever you don't use at the end, because our people can most definitely use that additional money through the summer. And, you know, it's tough to think they're all looking for jobs, because we know, even when we had enough drivers, there's going to be 30, 35 drivers that don't come back because they get another job and they like it, they get paid more money, it's year-round. So we absolutely would definitely support something like that.
Thank you.
And I just want to add that it is a great idea, but it's also an idea that has been implemented successfully in certain areas in the state of North Carolina. For example, when I was at the state agency level, then Chancellor Oliva shared just how successful it was and brought some data there. We actually met someone who implemented and shared how powerful it was. So it's just wanted to shine a light on that is a practice that's actually been implemented successfully in some places.
Well, and I didn't come up with the idea, our sheriff's department does it, and it was, I think, an SRO that suggested it to me. And I know it's a union issue and bargaining and all that, but whatever.
We're significantly over the allotted time, so anyone else have anything? Feel free. I have just a real quick few things. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, our transportation department. By the end of the year of this school year, would it be possible that we get the on-time percentage data for the year, and if there's any trends we see? I really want to look again at high school, like you talked about, our on-time percentage in the morning. I think that would be good. I want to see if we can analyze and see what that went through like this year. So next, real quick, Mr. Lloyd, real quick, for bus occupancy, you talked about it. For standard full-size bus within his district, how many kids would that normally hold if it was around capacity?
Our buses, they say 77 capacity, so I can sit here and tell you 77. The reality is, with the middle school and high school kids, we're not getting 77 kids. I mean, there's 3 seat belts for each one.
Okay.
But the reality is, we only try to get the older kids, really 2 per seat. And even in elementary school, they might go 3 to a seat out of necessity, but it's usually the first stop and 17 kids get off, and then it's back down. So there's 77 capacity gen ed buses, but we try not to get high school kids. High school kids just won't cram in, to be perfectly honest.
Understood. Thank you. No, thank you. And last question, I just wanted to take off something that Ms. Patrica talked about. When we went through elementary proximity, and this is probably also for the superintendent as well as middle school proximity, there's kind of a discussion about some further alignment with high schools, or better to align with that in the future. I don't know if that's something we're going to continue to look at.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. I appreciate it. We got to move on at this point. So at this point, we're going to move on to the Jewel settlement briefing. Dr. Savage, when you're ready, if you want to begin the introductions.
Yes, just while they're coming up, we have our student services team coming up, specifically related to our constituent handling. You have your 3 directors who are all coming up today to give you all the proactive things that are coming out of this tremendous opportunity. So very excited when we listen to this at Cabinet, and very excited to share it here with the board today. Ready?
Is that better? There we go. Thanks. Good afternoon, Board President Fisher, board members, Dr. Savage, Attorney DuPuy-Bruno, and other staff members here. My colleagues Rachel Gould, Tammy Scott, and I are very thankful and pleased that we have the opportunity to present to the board today our plan to use the funding that we'll receive from the Jewel settlement. For those people in the community who might not be familiar with Jewel, Jewel was a company established, an American company established to provide e-cigarettes as opposed to regular cigarettes. And because of the marketing that occurred from the Jewel company, there was a lawsuit filed by many school districts across the United States, and a settlement was made with them, which the Lee County School District was a part of. So we're excited about some of the opportunities that we have from the Jewel settlement, but we always need to keep in mind too that the reason we do have this funding is because of the negative effects that Jewel and other companies that produce vaping products the effects that they've had on children and families. And so that's why we're here today. So the agenda for today, we're going to talk a little bit about the litigation and the settlement itself. We'll give you a payment breakdown, some historical data on the use of tobacco and vaping in our school district, the current supports that we have here available to our students, proposed wraparound supports. We are going to talk a little bit about a social media campaign that will be an initiative starting this summer, and tiered consequences. We did talk a little bit. We presented some of those to the board at our last meeting in relation to the code of conduct. We'll kind of reiterate some of those recommendations, and we'll talk about projected costs.
In April 2020, the district approved participating in the litigation process against Juul. We appreciate their awareness of how significant the disruption of vaping is to schools and the harm it is doing to our students. Through this successful litigation, the district was awarded over $3 million. After attorney fees, the district will net $2,220,879.59. For clarification, attorneys who settled the case were not school district attorneys. This slide shows payment breakdown. The slide payment payouts to the district. As you can see, we have already received 2 payments. Well, the first was in 2023, and the second was in February of 2024. These 2 payments total $1,442,333.44. The district will receive 3 additional payments. This slide shows the total student population of all schools, including our charters. The data indicates there's a steady increase in both tobacco and drug use. It does not mean that all tobacco and drug-related incidents can be attributed to Juul, but we do recognize the need for intervention. Later in this presentation, we will discuss how the Juul settlement money can be utilized to increase interventions and decrease tobacco and drug use.
So our current progression of interventions, we currently have 2 district prevention specialists. They provide substance abuse prevention courses to students through our schools. You would recognize them if you went to any of our community conversations this year, as they did a presentation on social media. But they offer also the development for family and community services as well. We have an MOU with the Hanley Foundation. The Hanley Foundation works with individual students or groups of students. They are embedded into the work at Success Academy, at the Prevention Center, as well as school-based administrators reach out to the Hanley Center to connect individual students with their program. And then we also have the Prevention Center currently. It is housed at Success Academy. Students are still tied to their home school, but they have a short period of time at the Prevention Center, and then they return back to their regular program.
This slide is a view of the comprehensive substance abuse interventions that we plan to implement using the funding from the Juul settlement. And some of these actually are at no cost to us as well, but it's a comprehensive plan for us to combat vaping use in our schools. I'm going to go clockwise here. So starting with the community agency and partnership support. And again, because of our expanded team, we are able to make connections with a lot of community agencies. So the Coalition for Youth Services was able to connect us with some of the anti-drug, substance abuse agencies that are out there that are willing to come in and provide support in the way of maybe some one-on-one counseling, possible social media help, and also coming in and talking to groups of students from the agency standpoint within the community. I did mention a social media campaign. Well, there are slides on these as well. We have, thanks to Dave Nolan, we have reached out to all of our local law enforcement agencies, and they are more than willing to partner with us on a social media campaign to present, our anti-vaping philosophy, I guess, if you will, to the community. So in the way of, we'll get into a little bit more detail, but in the way of social media and billboards, we're looking forward to that partnership with our local law enforcement. We are looking at district infrastructure. We are considering vape detectors. We have gone out and spoke to other districts who have vape detectors that they've implemented there. We visited, we've brought principals with us to take a look at that. And so that would be part of our proposal as a pilot within the school district. We are considering the expansion of OpenGate. All of our schools have OpenGate, and some of our high schools and middle schools actually use them and are able to set them at the standard where vaping devices would show up within those. And so we do plan to expand that, the opportunity to do that. We are looking at Saturday school and extended school day as an option. We presented this the last time as our code of conduct. We feel like this is a way to engage parents more in educating them on the effects of substances and the abuse that goes along with that. And so that would be part of our proposal to fund staffing to be able to do that. We are looking at student-led clubs. There are anti-drug clubs, student-led clubs across the United States that we plan to implement within the district as well. We are looking at different types of anti-drug curriculum. So when a student does engage in that behavior, we can provide that student and families with curriculum that will help to educate them more on the effects of those products. And we did talk about the tiered consequences also in the board presentation on the code of conduct. So a little bit more on the social media campaign. Again, I described the partnership with all of our local law enforcement agencies. We're looking at billboard use in each one of our zones to advertise our district initiative on anti-vaping. We are looking at our district website and with links to anti-vaping curriculum located on the website and public service announcements to be aired by local media. And we are working with our communications department. We'd like to get students involved in some of that as far as PSAs that will be aired by local media. These are the agencies that we were able to connect with. Obviously, we've had a long-standing relationship with the Hamley Foundation, and they currently provide resources, and they are interested in continuing to provide those resources for us. The Florida National Guard has a nice program where they come in and do assemblies for our students, and they do, demand reduction outreach, and their presentation is actually called Night Vision. And so we've had an opportunity to view that, and we think our students would be excited about that. Obviously, organizations like MAD and Drug Free Lee are also more than willing to partner with us. They have 3 programs now that are specific to anti-substance abuse called The Power of Me, The Power of You, and The Power of Parents.
Through the use of our dual settlement money, we can also support our student-led clubs within our schools. We have adult volunteer club sponsors, but some of those resources could include different types of swag materials that students like to wear or have, but this would be a resource for them. In addition, we are looking at providing a different level of mental health support for our students specifically that have indicated through our referral process a higher use of vaping and drug use. So this can provide us with professionals that would target a caseload of students that are in need of helping families connect with resources in our community. Ultimately, that is our goal, is to connect our families, get them to better understand the challenges students are facing, but connect them most importantly to the resources out in our community.
The next slides, again, these are the same slides that we presented, proposed to the board as a part of our code of conduct, but it just fits with what we're trying to do with our anti-vaping initiative. So this would be, established throughout the district as, what every school would use to help with changing behavior as far as substance abuse. So when we're talking about drug and alcohol use and possession, we're talking about first, second, and third offenses. If we look at the first offense, might be a level 3 offense where it might be up to 3 days out of school suspension. But then again, we're looking at providing some curriculum and again, trying to engage parents so that we may reduce the number of days as students are out of school, but at the same time, we're educating them more on the effects of substance abuse. And then progressively, if we get to the second offense, we're looking at, again, a higher level of consequences for those students, but then possibly, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that extended school day and possible Saturday school option to reduce the number of days of out-of-school suspension. And then obviously, if we get to the third offense, we do have a level 2, which is a recommendation to our Alternative Learning Center, which is the Success Academy. Take note that every one of these offenses have to be reported to law enforcement as well. And again, same type of system for tobacco use. I won't go through that step by step, but there are a level for each offense for the use, but there is an opportunity for our students to reduce that if they participate in an education program for both them and our parents. And so we did hit on, as a part of that tiered consequences, that we are proposing to implement an extended day program. We did go up, had an opportunity to visit Pasco County, which does utilize an extended day program, which consists of a series of 6 75-minute sessions. Each one of those sessions addresses a certain need for students. It could be alcohol abuse, substance abuse, coping skills, whatever is necessary to educate students on the effect of the substances that they are using. So each session would have a different theme to it. One of those sessions would require parent involvement or attendance as well in those sessions. It would be staffed and coordinated by professionals. Again, we're trying to implement as much parent involvement and engagement as possible. We are looking at hosting one of these in each zone, so there would be opportunities for parents and students because of transportation reasons to attend one of the extended day programs without having to travel to one location within the entire county. Also providing a Saturday option for those students and parents that are unable to attend an extended day. And again, this would be in lieu of a suspension where students are out of school. They would attend this and be able to, once they do complete all 6 sessions, then that's when the reduction of the consequences would take place.
And so this is the projected cost of using the settlement money. We have spoken with 5 schools who are very interested in being our pilot schools with the vape detectors, 3 high schools and 2 middle schools. We've also worked with Dwayne Alton's department about the cost of installing the vape detectors. The average cost for the detectors is $1,000, and then that would be so it'd be $35 to install each detector. And that would be the overall cost to do the 5 schools, 30 units per high school and 20 units per middle school. The ongoing cost of the detectors that we're looking for is $75 per unit. That's a reoccurring cost each year. The other costs that we are proposing, security specialists to move per zone to help with open gates. So perhaps one day they would be at Mariner High School, the next day they could be at Ida Baker, the next day at Challenger, wherever schools would need the extra support, because we don't want to put more burden on schools because we know they are already overburdened. The contracted mental health and substance abuse professionals, again, that would be 1 per zone to take on that caseload of additional need of students. The social media campaign, We already have, when we spoke with our communications department, we already have a lot of campaigns that students have already worked on as projects. So we have some stuff that's ready to go. And then supplemental contracts for the tools program that we are looking to receive from Pasco County. And that would be the extended day and the Saturday extended time that families would attend. The anti-vape club resources, that would be for whatever extras we could give to kids to get them to be engaged and be on the preventative side, because those are the best spokesperson for other students. And so this is our projected cost for the first year of using the vape settlement funds. $681,550. Questions, comments?
Yep. Just before we close out, just want to, again, thank you to the team. Just want to make sure, just from any misconception standpoint, I believe, I'm under the understanding that all of our schools now do have the Open Gate technology deployed, all of them. So in one of the slides it said expanding, but they have now officially been deployed at all schools, so that's exciting. I also just want to give a special nod to our legal services, because obviously they're integral in this type of work as well. So I want to give the opportunity for Trinity Dupuy Bruno to add anything that we may have missed.
Thank you, Dr. Savage. So these types of cases, of course, are all under the auspices of legal services, because we work with and manage and supervise all of the attorneys that are our outside counsels. And thank goodness to WAC staff, who did a wonderful job on this particular case and will be joining us and helping us in the social media case. So we're very happy that it came to this conclusion. Thank you, Dr. Savage.
Any questions?
Thank you, Attorney Dupuy Bruno, and thank you, Dr. Savage. Board member comments, questions, concerns? We'll start with Ms. Patrica.
Thank you. I was going to give a shout out to legal as well. So thank you for identifying that there was a case here, and these are good resources for our kids. And turning to the presentation, thank you very much. You guys have done an amazing job of giving us a presentation as to how this money is going to be spent. If we look at slide 15, I am most excited by the top. I think, the vape detectors. To me, it's like, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't remember what the word is I'm looking for, but a detector would keep me from using a vape. Fear of getting caught. So I'm afraid, that's why I follow the law, because I'm afraid of getting caught breaking the law. So I'd like to think that my kids are maybe doing it for different reasons, because they know it's wrong, but I do it because I'm afraid of getting caught. I think a lot of kids, if they knew that there were vape detectors in there that work, and I have heard that they do work. Our colleagues down in Collier, I understand, are using them, and they have been shown to work quite well. And I think that
Yes.
they're using them up in Charlotte, or going to be using them in Charlotte. So it's not like we're going to be pioneers here using something that we don't know if it works. We know it works. And if I'm a kid, I'm going back to my high school days, if I'm a kid and I know that I'm going to get caught using it, I'm probably not going to use it. My question is, what are we doing in terms of extracurriculars and use of these devices? So when I was in high school, the only reason why I passed my classes was so that I could play basketball and soccer and track. If it wasn't for those things, honestly, I probably would have failed out of high school. I also knew that if I was late for school, I couldn't play in that game that night. So I was always on time for school on the days when I had practice or games. If I knew that getting caught smoking in the bathroom meant that I couldn't practice or play with my team for a week, then I probably wouldn't have smoked in the bathroom, right? Mm-hmm. So is there any connection to extracurriculars for the use of these devices?
It is part of our code of conduct, but it's a good point to make a connection with our athletic director to make sure that once these are implemented, that we're working with the athletic departments in each building so that we can have those conversations about how this affects athletes and extracurriculars and students involved in that. So appreciate that feedback.
Because like I know if my coach, even if we don't say you can't play tonight, if my coach knew I smoked, oh my goodness gracious, the fear of being benched, like, you know what I mean, all of it. And coaches have, not just coaches, but the band directors and the play people, the arts people, I mean, our kids look up to them. Our kids are, and so if the coach is made aware of the vaping that day, the kid's going to go to practice and be a little bit more afraid, right?
Yes.
If I'm making the right point. And I think those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Next up is Ms. Langford Fleming, followed by, it looked like Ms. Jordan's hand. Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. I know this is always quite something to take time to present all of this information. Ms. Patrica makes a good point with the extracurriculars. You know, an athlete or someone in the arts or someone who is first chair in the band, they do not want to disappoint their coach, their trainer, their instructor. So you make a very valid point. I think at the end of the day, it'd be something that we need to have that conversation, but we also need to make sure that there's follow through. Because unfortunately, there are some people that don't think that that's important enough to bench their star athlete the night of the district tournament finals. So, you know, I mean, it's just, really, it's a great point, but we have to make sure that we have buy-in. I will say, and I don't know where this would fit in, so it's just something that stands out to me. When I have attended multiple sporting events this year, it seems like it's happening more and more. That's where I'm seeing the vaping in the stands, in the bathrooms, standing in ticket lines, standing behind a football stadium stand. And it is happening a lot more than I think people recognize. And the alcohol use coming in and out of a football game or a baseball game. I just think that, I don't know where this fits in and how this can help prevent things like that coming into our facilities. I know we are in no smoking, no drinking campuses, but it is happening. And I have seen it firsthand. My other recommendation is whenever I love the ideas of the clubs, and I think you used the word the swag gear for their afternoon clubs. So my recommendation would also be, let's have this conversation with our student advisory. They're the ones that are living in this world. They're the ones that are having to deal with this in the hallways and the parking lots and after school hours. So I'd love to hear what our students have to say about how could we hook our kids into buying into this and it not just being one more thing that they have to, you know, I'd love to hear what they have to say, but those are my recommendations. Thank you so much.
Ms. Jordan?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And great ideas from both of you. But my question is, the schools that we have or that have been chosen or have volunteered to be the pilot schools, where are those schools located? Because I'm very interested in what schools they would be, and because of lots of reasons. Right. And I love the parent involvement, because if the parents are made to or have to stop what they're doing to participate, they would probably be a good influence on the kids of making them change their mind on how they act. So do you have the names of these schools?
We actually looked at, some numbers. We looked at some data to see where some of our highest usage was. And so we reached out, but we wanted to make sure that we approached principals. We basically talked about the idea and asked for some feedback. So we do have 3 schools that offered to participate in pilot at the high school level and 2 at the middle school level at this point. But the high schools, there is 1 in each zone to make sure. But those 3 high schools that have volunteered are 3 of the top 4 buildings that have the higher rates of use within their buildings. So far, Estero, Fort Myers, and Cape were the 3 high schools. And those were the principals also that we took to visit some of the other schools that have vape detectors so that they could ask questions about the implementation, how it's perceived. And to your point, Ms. Patrica, it is, all of those schools have told us that it's been a deterrent for students. So the numbers are decreasing. The amount of rates that those detectors go off are decreasing because the kids know that they're there. And it's not so much that They're there purposely to catch kids, but it's also to be there as a deterrent.
Okay.
If that answered your question.
Well, no, it did, and thank you for that. That wasn't the answer I was thinking it was going to be, but I appreciate that. And then also the middle schools?
The middle schools are Lexington and Calusa Middle School, and they're two experienced principals who are willing to take on that additional work. We also are concerned about kids who are not vaping and making sure that they have restrooms that they're comfortable to go into, and so it's secure for everybody.
Perfect, thank you, appreciate that.
Well, Ms. Jordan?
Thank you.
Anyone else before I make my comments? Okay. Thank you for this presentation. I appreciate it. Love what you guys are looking at for the settlement. The only thing I just want us to keep in mind generally is we're looking at some reoccurring charges for things that are not reoccurring funds. So I just want to make sure we really take a look at that. Just we've had some other issues with that in the past. So great work you're doing. I just want us to keep that in mind. So second thing, just real briefly, it's also National Prevention Week. So I wanted to give a shout out as well to two employees, Ms. Thompson and Ms. Wynn, who have been, I'm on Drug Free Lee, and they've been so integral, especially with the anti-vaping campaign. So I just want to make sure it gets out there. So, but great presentation. Thank you for all what you do. Okay.
Thank you.
At this point, we are going to move on to item 3, agenda of review for the May 7th, 2024 regular agenda. And whenever you are ready, Dr. Savage, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. So the first question that we had was about item I1, which was the approval to increase the current expenditure in the second expenditure period for ITB number B237440, 44D0. DO, and that's a toner, new and remanufactured. The question was, please explain why the last minute increase for such a short period of time for the public. Please advise what was paid last year. I understand that you're increasing the amount $225,000 to finish this year out. I understand that you're increasing the toner contract for next year to $1.5 million, which is another increase from this year's. Will this increase the budget for next year? It appears the costs seem to continue to rise. Therefore, we're increasing the budget, which can be a moving target. Are we addressing this for next year? I am concerned as I know that schools limit paper as well. I'm aware that at some schools, a ream of paper is only offered to teachers 4 times a year, bless you, which is not enough, and teachers supplement out of their own pockets. Is there a plan to increase paper for teachers so that they are not out of paper each month? In working with our team, the academic services, this is one of those decentralized decisions, so it's a site-based decision based on the individual schools. Schools have a varying different policies on how they utilize printing, paper, and their procedures, and some of that is due to, whether it's color, black and white, how much they want to overemphasize or not the use of paper and printing as part of their school approach. And so because it's decentralized, however, I want to make sure you know that we do provide the tools for schools to be able to manage and keep up with that piece, because again, some supplement with their own fee-based collections. They provide it's management software, but that's not managed at the centralized level. That's at the individual piece. It monitors the printed pages, color, mono, single-sided, duplex, and then schools can adjust limits and so forth and pull that. Also, just another understanding that the cost reporting for us is not precise. It's based on an average 20% toner coverage per imprint, and the per page costs and per page toner costs for the OEM cartridges. If they try to decrease that in some cases by going low capacity cartridges, that actually ends up increasing the per paper increases. So again, this is that doesn't even begin to address the copy machines, multifunction machines that are in some cases leased and so forth. So it really is it's not just a simple answer to that question, but I would say certainly willing to hear any further clarification needed on that particular piece. We're happy to provide as much information as we can on this.
Ms. Juvenile.
Thank you. That was my question. And I spoke to you about this. I just wanted the people to know that, costs are rising, and therefore we're having to keep up with that, which affects our budget. And it's important. And I also am aware, that I feel like the paper's being restricted at schools, and because I've had this happen at different schools, people contacted me telling me that they're out of paper, they don't have paper now until the rest of the year, they get it 4 times a year, and that's alarming that teachers aren't getting the support and the things that they need to teach. So I just, want to get public awareness and superintendent awareness, and hopefully that everybody has the same resources is what I'm hoping for.
So just to respond to that, there are certainly, as I mentioned, there's certainly variance between schools. But in terms of the essential resources that schools are offered in terms of our district adopted guaranteed viable curriculum, those resources are provided for all schools. And there are essentially the essential resources are provided. The challenge is that one particular teacher or school-based approach towards supplemental materials and making a copy for every student or having laminated copies. You'll have some schools where they'll take a single page, they'll laminate that particular piece and then have the students use dry erase to conserve that particular paper. They'll reuse templates. You have others who will print a full color copy because they choose to put more funds into that particular piece. So because it is decentralized, because schools have that latitude to be able to kind of approach that individual piece. You have some where they give them one ream of paper per quarter, as you mentioned, others where there is no limit on that piece and they can simply come, but then the school administration monitors it. And so we're certainly happy to try to adopt some best practices around that area if this is a particular area of concern, but because the schools have the ability to supplement utilizing fee-based collected resources to provide a different experience, that currently is permissible in the environment that we have. But certainly I'll have a conversation with academic services and we can talk in school development and say, how would we better characterize and frame this conversation so we can make sure there is equity out there and that their resources are being wisely monitored.
Thank you. I just want to, also for the record, these were elementary schools. I have not heard that in the middle or high school because I think they're more on the computer, more so. But elementary school, and there was kindergarten, and I don't remember the other one a few years ago that was complaining about the paper situation. But maybe it's just elementary. I'm not an educator, so I don't know how much paper is needed. So that's your...
Well, I've been in multiple schools at multiple levels, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of variance. I was at schools where we had color printing, and I was the one who had to put the hammer down, for lack of a better word, to limit that, and I would have to intervene directly with teachers. And I have other cases where your funds are just very limited at the school. We're not going to put any non-essential funds into that. We get them to utilize more of the technology, use the smartboard, use all these other hands-on manipulatives, things that can be reused. So it really is, and that's individual, that is school by school. But I hear the feedback as well, and I'll certainly follow up more in depth with our academic services team so we can, if there's anything else we want to raise the board's attention, we'll place that in the board weekly as well.
No problem. Thank you.
Pleasure. All right, the next question that we have here was under the other questions section, and this says, please advise that the substitute guest teachers have received the additional back pay that was owed to them with the new salary increase. I was told they would receive a lump sum retro after Kelly Ed took over. I was also advised that they would be paid the new salary increase for the time that the board approved the new guest salary pay at the end of last year through February 26th when Kelly Ed took over the services. When was this paid out to those guest teachers that worked during that period? So yes, the guest teachers have received their retroactive pay. On March 28th, actually, the district paid out the retroactive pay to guest teachers for the time period of January 9th through February 23rd, as you mentioned in the question, which included the new approved rates and the $500 bonus for every 30 days of coverage. This was communicated, the retroactive pay, to guest teachers via email and during the transitional orientation meetings that were held with Kelly Services. They were very appreciative and thankful to the board for making this happen.
That's awesome. Thank you. We just never got an update on that. So I took it as an opportunity to get that. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all the questions, Chairman.
Board members, do we have any other questions or comments in regards to tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, at this point, we're going to move on to good of the order and board member comment. I will start on the opposite side, if that's all right with you, Ms. Morgan.
Sure. I really only have, I'm going to save my comments for the next meeting, but I do have a question. I was talking to a staff member yesterday who said that when teachers retire, they cannot come back and volunteer under the same guidelines as not being able to come back and work. And I was astonished by that. I assumed that teachers or staff members could come back the day after they retire and tutor, for example. But that's not the case. Then that needs to be something that goes onto a legislative platform, because it's just inexcusable that we have those community resources. And if those people are retired for a year, they've found something else before they're eligible to come back. So I just throwing that out there. Thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Ms. Langford Fleming.
I have none, thank you.
Mr. Persons.
Yesterday, we read letters to teachers of appreciation, but one was sort of stuck out to me. I just want to comment on it. Read this letter, teacher was visibly emotional, but at the end, when I told her who it was, she said, I thought it would be a girl. She said, I was running through all the girls that I've taught over the years, and it was one of the young men that she had taught years ago. So that she thought she really didn't even have that much influence on, and but it was great. So it just shows that even the teachers sometimes have no idea how much they are affecting students throughout their career. And this student was also going to go to University of Florida, go Gators, so I'm happy, and be a teacher. That's all.
And come back here.
Thank you, Mr. Persons. Ms. Jordan?
I have nothing at this time, thank you.
Ms. Patrica?
So I'm going to save my comments for the briefing, not because I want the briefing to be longer, but because I think that my report belongs under where it says report. Yes. Okay, sorry, thank you.
Ms. Giovanelli?
I'll just talk about my reading to the teachers yesterday and teacher appreciation. I thought it was interesting because mine were all male but one woman. And that's just was impressive for me because everyone thinks a teacher is a woman, but not necessarily, or, you know, they have that, you have that stigma of a teacher is a woman, but men have a great impact on children. And, you know, so we have so many, the families that are fatherless these days, you know, that teachers have begun to fill that role. And I think it's so important because, you know, we miss that family, the family, every family's different now. And so I think that the more male teachers we can get in our district, and their leadership and their guidance is so important. And I just, I thought that was really neat yesterday. And one of them actually at South, he cried, and therefore then I cried, because I feed off others' emotions sometimes. So, and it was appropriate, but you know, it was a wonderful experience, and I hope we continue this tradition because it was awesome. And I just thank everyone that allows us to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Giovanelli. 'Tis the season, so I'll try to break up some of this between the meetings. So, a couple of us had the chance to go to the Cape Coral Chamber of Commerce, their education committee, the Excellence Education Awards. Those were fantastic, able to get some scholarships out to some of those high school seniors, as well as technical college and that, so that was fantastic. We had Take Stock in Children, the graduation, many of us, that was really awesome to see where they start and where they came with that. That was really another uplifting one. And just briefly, Dr. Savage and I attended the Foundation Strategic Planning session. I think it was really good. I think there was some really honest and open dialogue. You know, part of what we talk about, it's amazing the recognitions they do, but also where can we partner, meaning the foundation with the school district on certain specific projects, or whether it's specific schools, including looking at, you know, we look at how some of the other foundations throughout the state do things. So I think it was a really good, honest and open conversation. We had some great leaders in that room, and, you know, I really, we're going to be coming back to working on some of that, I believe in a month or two, but I really enjoyed that, being part of that conversation, the progress, and just seeing some of the external and internal feedback on that. So I will go to Attorney Debris Bruno next.
I have none, thank you.
Okay. Now, Dr. Savage.
I also have none, sir, at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. At this point, we will have a board briefing today at 2:30, followed by a board action meeting 6 o'clock tonight. At this point, having no other business to come before this body and seeing no objection, this meeting is adjourned, and the time is 1:34 p.m. Thank you, everyone.